and welcome to Arbitration Conversation. This week, I'm extremely excited and I feel super thankful to be talking with Ben Davis. Ben Davis is a leader, if not the leader, in arbitration. He's headed up just about every organization, including the American Bar Association section on dispute resolution. And again, he's an all-around nice guy, and I'm super happy to have him with us. So of particular import today is on June 9th, ICA, the International Council, or is it Center on International Commercial Arbitration, they came out and they had a new diversity pledge, a new diversity policy. And there's been a lot of discussion about this new policy that came out on June 9th. But I'm really excited to have Ben with us because he can share with us his thoughts on it, which would be awesome. Ben, thank you for being here.
Hey, Amy, how are you doing? I'm excited to be with you because you are just such an amazing person with what you're doing with regards to online dispute resolution in so many different ways. I want to admit, I go to your website and look at your classes and your documents many times just to see how you organize things, to learn about blockchains and all that. So this is really fun to be with you. And I see we're with Colin too. Hi, Colin. Good to see you.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me involved. I was excited about the conversation, and I'm happy to join in. My first arbitration conversation to join, so thank you. I'm delighted to be doing it with you, Ben, especially on this topic. And look at that shirt, man. Bazinga, you're floating in space, and you got the tie-dye going, and it's like, man, it's great.
This is for my commercial paper class. It has a grizzly bear, and it says HIDC, holder in due course. And if you see some paint on my hands, I'm sorry, I just finished painting something for my wife. So we're just kind of doing this like this, which is the nice, flexible attitude, I think, of arbitration conversations, arbitrate.com. And so I'm looking forward to talking to you. So let me talk about this ICA thing. Now, you got to understand, I'll just say real quickly, that ICA was founded basically by the International Chamber of Commerce a whole long time ago, and then ICA floated off on its own. And ICA is the International Council of Commercial Arbitration. It's kind of like, how should we describe it? The Valhalla of international arbitration kind of thing, you know? It's kind of right up there. Or the Olympia or Olympus, I guess, kind of different visions of this, where these are sort of the gods and goddesses of international commercial arbitration. And every few years, they have these conferences all over the world, and they've got a young ICA, and really this huge thing that's blossomed over time. So with all that being said, basically last week, they announced they have a diversity and inclusion policy, which, and it has several documents, and there's a press release, okay? So when I saw that this came out, having known them for many, many years, I was working at the ICC for about 14 years, from 1986 to 1999 or so. I snickered because I've known ICA for a long time, okay? And I really felt that, how to put it this way, the best way to describe my reaction to this is to say, what is the comment? Get your knee off my neck, okay? Get your knee off my neck for any blacks in international commercial arbitration, because we are literally 66 years after Brown versus Board of Education, and ICA finally gets the idea that it needs to have a diversity and inclusion policy. I mean, that is kind of pitiful, all right? Now, I'm not gonna say anything that's negative for the people who put it together. I mean, it's obviously a good thing, but it is very weak tea. You know, one of the things that that's going on is somebody has, a wonderful woman named Catherine Simpson has actually gone and looked at the legal 500's top international arbitration practices in the US, the top 37 firms. And I think that out of the 37 firms, maybe 1% of the entire attorneys are African-American or of African descent. And there are many firms that have none in their international arbitration practice, right? So this kind of paper from ICA, where I know that the people who are in those top 37 firms are the sort of gods, or at least barons or something like that, and baronesses of international arbitration, it really makes me say, it's not serious. There is a part of me, oh, well, it's not serious, it's maybe a little too strong, but it's not good enough. Because there's a part of me that said that with the murder of George Floyd, all of a sudden they had to do something, or they had something in the works, so they may have accelerated it to get it out there to show, hey, look, we're cool. It's kind of co-opting that all this energy that they're seeing everywhere and saying we're part of the stream, right? But if you look at the day-to-day, and I did a study back in 2004, I did another study in 2014 trying to look at diversity in international arbitration, and basically on the American side. And in 2004, somebody said, when I asked, have you ever met, these distinguished arbitrators, I asked them, have you ever met an African-American in international arbitration, right? And the guy said, yeah, you. All right, and I was like, what? Really? I mean, it's absurd, right? And then the numbers have improved. Certainly for women, they have improved since then in my 2014 study. But as these numbers that we've seen now that have been worked out painstakingly by Catherine Simpson show, there's nothing there. It's anemic. And there actually are firms that don't have any blacks at all. And I'm like, this is really absurd. It's really absurd. In fact, I think that between when I wrote my little message on dispute resolution listserv and today, all of a sudden, a bunch of these firms found magically 25 people to add to their numbers, right? Which means that they just flipped somebody's name into, you're now in our arbitration group. Are they actually doing arbitration work? No, it's cosmetics. You understand? And I just got a message from somebody related to this. Says, don't worry, we're working on it. Yeah, I know you're working on it. Yeah, I've been working on it too. But it's not too. It's too slow. It's too slow. And so there's, really in my head the thought was, please just get your knee off our neck with all your rationalizations, with all your stuff that you think means some reason why you think that this is okay. So I had a friend of mine say to me, a lot of the top firms, the big law firms, they're looking for diversity. I'm like, looking for diversity? Come on, man. I mean, this is 66 years after Brown. How hard you been looking, man? I'm sorry.
What do you think about, I've had several students over the years who have worked on articles addressing this, and there's been just different discussion. What do you think when they talk about the pipeline problem? Do you see it as a pipeline problem, or would it help? Or do you think there's some way that you create better policies?
Well, what I think is there are certain places that people go to get into the pipeline in terms of internships, and really a very important one is the Vismut, the Vismut in Vienna and the one in Hong Kong. I just saw that I think the #1 team this past year was Penn State Dickinson, and among the people on the Penn State Dickinson team, the oralist I think was a black woman, if I remember right. This is a person who should be in somebody's arbitration group the first day she goes work in a law firm. I know when I worked at the ICC, that we had members of the ICC who went to the VIS and they saw somebody argue and they said, we got to hire that guy. We've got to find a way to get that guy a job here at the ICC. So this is one pipeline that is there. And how many students of color actually do the VIS? That's one thing. A lot of people obviously are not aware of this whole international arbitration space. I certainly wasn't when I was in law school. It just turned out that I wanted to be overseas. So I got a summer job in Paris. Turned out the guys I was working with were working in arbitration. And, that kind of was like second after my 2L summer, right? And then really a job was, I saw a job in the International Herald Tribune when I was about 2 or 3 years out of law school. And there was a job for legal counsel at the ICC. And I said, English, French, international, business, law, all those pieces of me work together, and in Paris. And I applied, and it just turned out I knew like 2 or 3 American lawyers, but they were all gods of arbitration. So they gave me references, and that helped clean my resume up, and and that's how sort of I got into it. But that kind of path, if you want to think more traditionally, let's think of it as somebody goes to work at a big law firm in New York. You know, it's always hard enough to get into those firms, but say you get into them. Then inside that firm, do you get to go to the international arbitration group? Or there may be just one person who's the arbitration person, right? Do you get to be literally carrying their bags? You know, I mean, whatever you need to do to be that person. Are they comfortable with dealing with, it could be a woman, it could be a person of color, whatever. Or, you know, are they kind of like, you know, the old school sort of stale, pale, and male types who are really looking for somebody who looks like them, right? All those kind of dynamics inside of firms. Another one is like, for example, when there's a job to do in an overseas office, who gets called to do the over, you know, can you go to Bratislava tomorrow? Do you think that Bratislava tomorrow person's going to be one of the people of color, or is it going to be somebody else who's going to be tapped for that? I mean, I always thought that one of the big things in my life was always those moments where somebody would say, you know, can you, like, I remember when I worked at the ICC, the Secretary General, Stephen Bond, said, there's the International Bar Association's having a conference in Nairobi. You know, I gotten busy, I can't really do it. Would you like to do it? And I said, sure, you know, and you say yes right away, you know?
Oh, yeah.
You know, and then it turned out there were riots in Nairobi and it all got moved to New York, which was kind of the center of everything, right? He could have been a guy who said, okay, well, it's in New York, now I'm going, right? I mean, you can understand that. But, you know, he said, no, it's your thing, and you go on and do that. And I'm speaking of Stephen also because he just passed away. He was now at Covington and Burling. And so, you know, this is kind of honoring him. But, he, you know, he gave me that chance, and I wrote a paper for that. And then Jan Paulson came up to me and said, you know, we'd like to publish that in Arbitration International. I didn't even know if you could publish things, you know. I'm clueless, you know. I said I had to ask the IBA if they permit me to. You know, I mean, it's absurd, right? But all those kind of things, I wouldn't have been there if Stephen Bond hadn't said, hey, Ben, why don't you do that? Or even for the summer job, that summer law school, I went to the folks who were interviewing, and one of them was a guy named Eric Schwartz, and for this firm. And he recommended I go to see the big boss at the time, Gene Forcione. And I saw and had the second interview, and I got the job for the summer. So, you know, Eric Schwartz looked at me, this guy, I spoke French because I'd worked in the Ivory Coast for a summer before, and I got a French thing going back. So, you know, but he said, let me give this guy a shot. That's, you know, and all those things put me on the path. And then, you know, you got to work hard like everything else in life. But those kind of opportunities, you know, when the partner in the law firm is thinking about adding somebody to their arbitration group, you know, give people chances. That's all. Now, if they screw up, then get rid of them. You know, they do that all the time in law firms. You know, but if they're like really into it, let's go. And then the arbitral institutions, of course. I remember the time when people thought that women couldn't be like the senior counsel or counselors on teams because, you know, worried about people from the Middle East. Would they respect a woman in that role and all that? You know, and then first woman was hired as a counsel at the ICC, you know, guess what? It worked. Now they're like half or 2/3 of the counsels at the ICC are women. And guess what? It's working fine. You know, I mean, it was just mind games that people play. So that, you know, that concept of just get off our necks and, you know, give people the chance, the opportunity to try things. That's what we got to do. And so a diversity policy is a nice thing. I'm not saying anything against it. And, you know, just to get it through the politics, I imagine inside of ICCO was complicated and all that, right? But they're not going to get a pat on the back from me. You know, it's like, no, thanks. You got more to do. Like, you know, get your folks to actually do things because those kind of numbers that we're seeing are pitiful. They really are. And they were pitiful back in 2004, you know? So
yeah, and I mean, just to pipe in on this too, Ben, these are law firms and arbitral organizations. They know how to get stuff done. They do big stuff all the time. And for people to say, well, we're looking into it, we're working on it, you know, give us time, we're going to make progress. If they wanted to do it, they would do it. And this moment in the United States is about enough. Enough of the excuses, enough of the putting it off, enough with the, well, okay, we'll think about it, we'll do a policy. No, the time has come for us to say, we're going to find people, we're going to make this change, and we're going to do it, no excuses. And I think I hear you saying that loud and clear.
Yeah,
Yeah,
step work action.
yeah, and you know, and one of the things that's really kind of perverse with these kinds of diversity policies can be that, hey, we got a policy, hooray! So we're not going to do anything. It's like, well, look, we got the policy. That was a battle. Yeah, yeah. No, sorry, that's just step one. Or maybe it's step 0 or whatever. Actually, step 1 is just hiring people, whether you have a diversity policy or not. If you have actually people who are diverse in your firm. I think we found, like, for example, Debevoise and Plimpton, I think, had like 10% of its international arbitration practice were persons of African descent. Debevoise is doing pretty well. That kind of diversity of thinking, that kind of people willing to go all over the world. I mean, I remember, look, I can tell you so many stories. First time I went to India, I was for the ICC. Somebody came and took me to the side and said, oh, Indians hate black people. I said, oh, really? Okay, all 1.2 billion Indians hate apparently, right? Okay, so, I go out to India, right? And everybody's cool. Everything's fine. I have a great time, And so I'm like, okay. Then I got, we're going out to Hong Kong, right? For another thing for the ICC. And somebody takes me aside, oh, Chinese people hate black people. I said, oh, really? Okay, well, all 1.6 billion of them, and I went out to Hong Kong, and guess what? The people were cool, people were just as fun as anywhere else. Just like people say, oh, all white people hate black people. I said, really? All of them? I mean, really? Even my old friends from there, good Lord, I said, yes, we can find assholes everywhere. I will stipulate, okay? I will stipulate. By the way, they're black people hate black people. I can stipulate. But the point I'm just trying to make is, on the whole, you find lots of decent people out there in the world. And that's part of the magic. I went to Bosnia, okay? I'm in Bosnia to talk about diversity, all right? At a conference that the Bosnian Arbitration Institute was having a year or so ago. There's 6 women who've created that arbitration institution. They're I think they're Russian Orthodox, they're Catholic, and they are Muslim. And they're all about 30-ish, okay? And they got this crazy idea. Let's create an arbitration institution. Let's have an annual meeting. And they're doing it, and and they're creating a space. What happened? First of all the old folks look at them like, oh, what's wrong with you? You're there's something wrong with you. Or I remember one of them said that a guy came up to her and said, you got to talk, being like, you have crazy eyes. This is one of you have crazy eyes because of your passion for international arbitration. So you need to calm down. And I was like, it's okay to be passionate about it. It's a good thing. That's healthy. That's called like finding your thing, right? And so, but after 5 years, people start to warm up to them. They said, yeah, we're here. We're players. We're making this happen, And then the folks say, hey, well, can I speak at your event? And all that stuff starts coming up. So it's just, to me, I'm happy. I'm happy that ICA has, to some extent, seen this. It took the murder of George Floyd for them to maybe react. And I'm cynical enough to say that this thing got rushed and put forward just because of the incredible reaction that's gone around the world to this. By the way, I just saw that the UN is going to hold a special session on Wednesday.
I saw that. Yeah.
This is, this is like huge, and at a level of change, so to speak. So, or let me put it this way. It's huge in the level of thinking that many people are doing. But I always say, when you have this kind of movement, there's a really great, I don't know if he's still alive, Italian sociologist that I just want to highlight to you. Everyone should read his book. It's called Movement and Institutions. The English version came out in 1984. And he talks about how movements develop and then how the institutions respond to the movement, okay? Because the institutions are these structures of control, of power, and all. It's like, to take an example, the Vatican as opposed to the Catholic belief, right? There are Catholics everywhere, but there's an institution, and the Vatican is kind of a conservative institution as compared to all the kinds of liberation theology types and all that were going on, right? So anyway, he says institutions respond in 4 ways, right? Repression, okay, we've seen that, right? Is that those flash bombs, right? Co-optation. Third one, make you think it's a fantasy. Come on, this is not real, And of course, the last one, I'm sorry, is just like killing people. Okay, that is ultimately what they do. So to me, I look at ICA. This is a co-optation move by an institution to kind of bring it into its thing. And it's not. And co-optation can be good and it can be bad, because co-optation can be a way of essentially silencing change by bringing it in and kind of integrating. Or co-optation can be really like changing internally. I mean, really doing the hard work. And so that's what I'd like them to do. And, my view is that since I'm not interested in being an arbitrator, okay, since I'm not interested in being a counsel for anybody, my role, so to speak, is to be free and to say what I really think. And they all know me. So, to tell them, you got to step up your game. It's not good enough. That's all. I mean, they can listen, they can not.
Action, not just words. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean that's why you make for a good conversation, Ben. I mean, your comments make me think also of the Gandhi quote. First they ignore you, then they make fun of you, then they argue with you, and then they say, "Yeah, we always knew you were right." I mean, the thing it seems to me is, if you're going to make a change, the thing you need to do is make the change. Don't put out a statement. Don't have a study group. Don't have a lot of people having conferences where you talk about it. These are people who know how to do things. We know how to do it. We just got to do it. So that is why this is so important. You got to hold people accountable. And I don't think this is the beginning. This isn't the end. This is the beginning of holding people accountable. If you say that this is what you want to do, go do it. You're a smart, capable person. You can do it. So I think there's going to be many more conversations along those lines. So.
Right. And I'm hoping, and I'm hoping that, in some law firm somewhere, there is some new first-year associate, right, who didn't dare talk to the senior partner about wanting to do some of that international stuff, because folks around him say, "Oh, that's the the grumpy, I don't know, scary dude right down at the
bear. Don't poke the bear."
Yeah, don't poke the bear, man. You don't want to go there, But that first-year associate will now just maybe go down to that office and knock on that guy's door, that woman's door, and say, that international arbitration stuff interests me. And then, and then the person looks down the nose at him, disdain. By the way, there's the one game I want to throw you, which is I call it the X+1 game. So give your resume in, and your resume has all the things you've ever done in it, right? Great. And they go for the interview and they say, "Man, you are the one. You are beautiful. You are so dynamic. By the way, do you speak Urdu?" I said, and there's nothing on your resume about Urdu, right? You're like, "Oh man." And the guy looks at the other guy and says, "Man, this guy, she's great. She's wonderful. Or this guy's great. If he had that Urdu thing, man, that would make it work." It's like,
that was the one thing. Yeah.
X is always, it's a game. It's funny. Well, actually, I am studying Urdu right now. You gotta.
Oh, really?
Just be ready for the game. That's all. Because it's inevitable. It's inevitable. Or I've seen it so many times. And then another trip is along the lines of, well, I'm cool, but my clients, they're not used to it. It's like this was basically that thing about women being counsels. We're cool, but how the Middle Easterners going to react to a woman being, And now I know so many women who are law professors of Middle Eastern background or are in the Middle East, and of course this counsel's doing great stuff. And it's like, it's the role, if somebody puts you in the role, everybody figures out that's the role. They must, somebody check them out, and then it's a question of backing people up. I know of somebody who was going to meet with the client of a firm, and basically the senior guy said to her, that client comes from X country and they don't really like to deal with women, so I'm going to do the meeting, right? And so the woman had to call the client and say, "Look, I've been working with you all this time. I got to deal with this guy, so we're going to have to work around on this." I'm saying, please just get your knee off my neck. You know what I mean? Just let her roll with her thing, because she's obviously, the client liked working with her. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
The whole logic of this. And, the whole stuff, but it's so hard to do cross-racial, cross-cultural, cross-whatever, the cross-gender mentoring. That's just bullshit. I'm sorry.
There's going to be, well, and also Sarah Rudolph Cole, we're going to have her on Arbitration Conversation next week. And she actually just wrote an article about diversity and lack thereof and how do we really make change. So there's a lot of voices that are entering this space and to actually bring action, you know, not just words.
Right. Like, so when I started at the ICC, the guy I worked for was a guy named Michel Godet. He was the chairman of the court, and Stephen Bond was the secretary general. So Godet was Frenchman. He was actually one of the people who helped create the European community back in the 50s. He was the first legal advisor for the European community. You know, I mean, building that European space after World War II, right? Trying to create a peaceful space, all that huge task of getting French and Germans and, you know, Belgians, you know, all those folks, right? And, you know, this is the guy who hires me, right? And in fact, before me, there was another Black American named Roberto Powers who'd been hired by him as a counsel. And back in the 70s, he had made a woman, Tia Maria de Hancock, the head of the secretary to the ICC, right? So you'd say, oh my God, stale, pale, and male. Yeah, my goodness, you know? But he was obviously way open-minded. His thing, he helped create what it was called an East-West arbitration group to have dialogue with the Eastern Europeans and the Russians, as well as the Western Europeans, you know? And then when everything happened in '89, it became the European Arbitration Group, which was, you know, these, you know, they got to understand the spirit, right, of these kind of people, right? And I remember 3 days into the job at the ICC, they replaced an arbitrator. A party wasn't happy. They brought a lawsuit in Zurich against the other party, the structure of the thing, about the change of the arbitrator done by the ICC. And then this letter comes in German from the Zurich Obergericht asking for a statement from the ICC, right? And it's my case, right? I just literally been on the job 3 days, this starts. And 2 weeks in, this letter in German, which I don't read, but their other counsel, Michael Buehler was one of the guys. And now I see what it is. So I'm like, okay. So I'm thinking, okay, I make little files of everybody, everything, and I kind of get 3 or 4 together, and I'm going to take it up to one for the president and one for the secretary general and Steve Bond and one for the general counsel, a guy named Sigvard Yarvin and all that. And I get called into a meeting with, you know, Chairman Godet about this thing, right? And I said, well, you know, I prepared a file for it. He said, I swear to God, he said, Mr. Davis, I don't need a file. This is your case. And kind of other people snickered in the room. I'm still on probation, okay, in the 6-month probation period, right? And he's like, this is your file. And so, you know, my shot, so to speak. You know, now if I pulled it off, great. If I blew it up, so no, they got enough people around who can cover, you know, you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
But do a thing of like, well, let's give the file to somebody else or anything like that. It says, no, man, we hired you, make it happen, you know? And that, you know, is like any one of us, right? When you get hired to be a law professor or anywhere you go, it's like, make it happen. Well, that's the line from Star Trek, so that's appropriate in the background here. Make it so, right?
Make it so. Well,
all
Ben,
right.
this was so great. Thank you. And this is the beginning, as I said, of many other conversations, but it's been wonderful to have you with us. Please, Amy.
Yeah, thank you. This has been tremendous, super fun. I could talk to you all day.
Yeah, I could too. It's great seeing both of you. You know, you're good people. You're good people, and you know, it's what we all do together that makes all the difference. I'm telling you, what we all do together makes all the difference in this space. I have a wonderful story about Colin. I've had respect for Colin for so far back.
But don't tell the story, Ben. Let's save that for a future conversation. I
all right, we'll leave it for another.
Before you tell it, we got some stories. So
okay.
Thank you so much. This was great. And I'm delighted that this was my first arbitration conversation too. So let's keep it going and let's keep spreading the word.
All right, brother.
All
Sister,
right.
see you later.